for the Rider Dynasty podcast. Let's go! Welcome to the Rider Dynasty podcast with Ryan Bickerstaff, JJ Wenner, and your host, Michael Kloss.
And that's how you start a show. That is a fresh new intro for the freshest guys that I know. JJ, thank you for putting that together. That new intro is fire.
Man, I've been working in my Beats studio all week on it.
Beats by JJ. Trademark that. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. We certainly thought that was cool. Welcome to the Ride or Dynasty podcast. As you heard, we do have an incredible show for you today. And I'm not just saying that. I am Michael Kloss, and always joining me are my compadres, the most knowledgeable dudes in all the land. The first is Ryan Bickerstaff. Ryan, how's it going?
Hey, it's going well. Got a great show for you. So, like Rare Earth, get ready.
Dang, and then you just heard from JJ, our new beat master extraordinaire.
Absolutely. I mean, Mama cooked a breakfast with no hog, so you could say today was a good day.
Let's kind of get right to the show. You know, we're going to jump right in. Today, we're really excited to get into our division previews. So who are we starting with today, fellas?
We're going to kick things off with the NFC East, mainly because JJ said we should, but because it's also home to the westernmost East team in the NFL, which is the Dallas Cowboys.
And I mean, that seems like a good enough reason. Eddie, JJ, can you kind of break down for our listeners just kind of the format that we're going to use for these division previews?
Absolutely. We're going to go through and talk about almost every relevant fantasy player in the NFC East, but we're also going to take a look under the hood and give you one rising star, one fading star, one sleeper from each team. Okay,
so just so I'm tracking right, one rising star, one fading star, and one sleeper. I got it. I am ready. And, of course, we'll have all of our picks on our website. That's riderdynasty.com. You can find us on Twitter. Our handle is @RiderDynasty. We encourage you to interact with us there. Really, one of the three of us is usually on at some hour of the day jabbering with somebody, talking about fantasy or even asking if, they got their air conditioning. We're nice people. We're just asking good questions here. So before we begin, let's take a quick poll. As Ryan said, we're talking NFC East. So, Ryan, who do you have winning the division, and who's coming up short?
All right. I have the Dallas Cowboys winning this division. I just think they have the most complete team. In the NFC East, they have, in my opinion, the best defense. I think it's a young unit, and they're all going to be hitting their primes pretty soon. They have Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch, a nice secondary over there. And you have a guy, an underestimated quarterback, a top 10 quarterback in Dak Prescott. I just see the Cowboys coming out on top. And,
I have to agree with Ryan on that one. I picked Dallas as well to finish on top. I think Philadelphia has a shot, but Dallas just looks like the more complete team to me right now.
Tough to argue with you there. I'm going to just go a little bit different route, and I'm going to say the Eagles. I really like the offense. I think that they're, got a great defense as well, and I think it's going to be hard to stop the Cowboys in that defense too, but Carson Wentz finally with a couple years under his belt, hopefully healthy, is going to be tops for me. What about last place?
Got to go New York Giants here. They're a directionless franchise right now. I don't see them winning more than 4 or 5 games this year.
I I wanted to say the New York Giants. I agree with everything Ryan said, but I went with the Washington football team. That team is not good. I mean, especially if Geis doesn't come back from injury, if there's any delay, they do not look like a good team this year.
Yeah, it might be tough. I'm with you on that. I did agree with Ryan. I did go with the New York Football Giants. Maybe the refusal to go to Daniel Jones might be a problem if they continue to trot Eli out there, and he might spend a little bit more time on his back, and Saquon can only do so much. So let's for me say the New York Giants as last place. But as both of you picked Dallas as your division champion, that seems like a great place to start. So let's look at, and the way that we can sequence this too is we'll run down the quarterbacks, the running backs, the wide receivers, and the tight ends, all that we feel are fantasy relevant. Talk about those. Like we also, as JJ mentioned, we'll go through our rising, our fading, and then our one sleeper player. So if you don't mind, let me kick it off, if that's okay with you, gentlemen. I have, we'll start at the quarterback, as I mentioned, and I would love to talk just a little bit about Dak Prescott. I saw a really interesting stat earlier today when I was just kind of looking about this. And Dak, since joining the NFL in 2016, no quarterback in the league has led more game-winning drives than Dak Prescott. That surprised me a lot. Pro Football Reference credits him with 14 game-winning drives in the regular season, so he's a finisher. He's, as Ryan mentioned, he's been in the top 10 for fantasy quarterbacks for the last 3 years, all of those 3 years, which is not too surprising for me just based off his arm and his rushing prowess. So for me, a rising star just in the league. And as you guys mentioned, a candidate to lead the team to win that division. I really think that if you're going to look at a player that is fantasy relevant, all signs point to Dak Prescott here.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Michael. I'm a big fan of Prescott. I've been trying to pick him up in all of my leagues. I find a lot of people are willing to let him go for cheap. So if you can grab him, make sure you do. And, just count the returns.
Yeah, in Superflex leagues, I can only rate this off the 2 startups that I've done so far this year. And I got Dak in the 8th round of a Superflex, which I was a little bit flabbergasted at. So that doesn't mean that will repeat, but I think that just shows he's not flying off the board early, especially in a league that quarterbacks are highly coveted.
Yeah, in other words, take advantage now while the world's still sleeping on Dak.
Yeah, he could be good for a while. So let's keep the train moving, unless anyone else has anything to talk about Zach or Dak. So I wanted to call him that because I'm thinking about Zeke. Is there anything that you guys want to touch on? One of the maybe my frustrations about fantasy football in general and podcasts that I actually really love is some of the people aren't willing to talk about the stars because they're throwaways, because you're going to grab them quickly anyways. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything special about Zeke? And do we really think that he seems just like a slam dunk top 4, top 5 overall pick this year?
Yeah, Zeke gets fed the ball. They're not going away from him. There's not a lot to say. Zeke is definitely the go-to. Now, I'm a little concerned that he's going to get arrested or something in August after training camp. So you might want to pick up Tony Pollard, who is a rookie who they drafted this year.
As long as Ezekiel Elliott's on the field, he's a top 3 running back. The film speaks for itself. That said, to piggyback off what JJ said about Pollard kind of played like a hybrid receiver running back for Memphis in college. And that's becoming a more popular archetype in today's NFL, like that kind of hybrid running back receiver player. If, like a good offensive coordinator will find a way to line Tony Pollard up all over the field. He can be on the field all 3 downs. line him up as a slot receiver, out of the backfield, taking handoffs or whatever it might be. You get a player like this, he can do a little bit of everything. That's a very valuable weapon for an offense.
I'm gonna touch on this in just a little bit when I start talking about my sleepers, but that offensive coordinator that you're talking about is Kellen Moore, a former quarterback. So
Boise State.
Yeah, there's that opportunity really to use his strengths and be able to again utilize a player like Pollard. Is Mike Weber fitting in the mix at all?
No, I don't see him beating out Tony Pollard. Maybe for more of the short yardage work. Like Ryan said, Tony Pollard is sort of a hybrid receiving type back. But I think Tony Pollard is definitely the only other running back to own.
So we're looking, when we were compiling our rising stars, our fading stars, and our sleepers, the three of us put a lot of stock in some wide receivers. So on the depth chart, we're looking at Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, Tavon Austin, Alan Hearns, Randall Cobb, and Cedric Wilson. So I think, JJ, you had spoken about Amari Cooper in the past. Is he a wide receiver one this year?
A wide receiver one on that team? Probably.
Yeah.
I'm not a believer in Amari Cooper. I pointed out how poorly he performed in the majority of the games for the Cowboys last year. He had two great games. He had two great games for the Raiders. He had two great games for the Cowboys. Outside of that, he was garbage. So I'm not drafting him.
You and Ryan would probably much rather wait on someone else on this.
I don't know. I actually kind of have Amari Cooper as a borderline wide receiver one. I wouldn't take him as a top 12 receiver, but I think I have him around 13 or 14. I mean, let's just look at the facts here. After Amari Cooper got traded to Dallas, he played 9 games for the Cowboys, and he had 725 yards and 6 touchdowns. He was on pace. That would be a pace for 94 catches, almost 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns over a full season.
He's about our consensus 17 wide receiver, our average at least.
I think he is probably going to finish higher than 17, just based on this. I mean, this is one more year in the offense. They have a new offensive coordinator. He's a younger guy. I think he's going to come with some fresh ideas. One more year, getting, that chemistry with Dak Prescott going. I think Amari Cooper could actually be a very good player for Dallas this year.
Well, Ryan, what are your thoughts on some of the other members of that wide receiver?
All right, so Michael Gallup, who I actually identified as my rising star, he was one of my favorite wide receivers from last year's rookie class. He was decent as a rookie, 33 catches, 507 yards. He only had 2 touchdowns, but I see that number ticking up this year. In fact, I see all those numbers going up this year. He flashed in a couple of games against the LA Rams in the playoffs that he really shined, where he took maybe 6 catches for 119 yards. And, that's against a Super Bowl caliber defense as a rookie. I think that he's trending up again, one more year in the system, getting acclimated to the NFL. He came from a smaller college, Colorado State. I'm predicting a sizable jump for Gallup this year, especially with Amari Cooper on the other side occupying the top defensive back on the opposing defense.
I am a fan of Michael Gallup. Last year, he had a pretty poor catch percentage, hovering right around 50%. I think this year, if he can bring that up to just the league average, closer to like a 62%, he's going to stand in for what the Cowboys really need, which is a solid second receiver, which they've been lacking for many years.
I was putting Alan Hearns into my fading category. A lot of that felt just of the air kind of out of the sails of him, with that broken ankle, which looked rather gruesome. Of course, you can make a fine recovery from that. I've been impressed with Alan Hearns, and I even wrote on this website about close to a year ago that while of course he didn't have a pedigree like Des Bryant, his stats along kind of the same lines and playing 2 fewer games was, again, right around like about 100 yards less, just 2 touchdowns less as well than Des Bryant. So I was thinking that Allen Hurns was really going to be able to make that step up, as you say, JJ, and I'm just not feeling it. So I'm fading Allen Hurns, and I'm thinking that my sleeper in this category is going to be Cedric Wilson. It might be too much of a stretch to play the Kellen Moore Boise State and Cedric Wilson Boise State, the little love fest there, just since they both went there. But, Wilson had that shoulder last year. He can play slot. He can play X. I foresee that he's a speedster. I really think that, he's going to be able to kind of crack that, the team, just to be able to kind of get through. I know health concerns are the obvious option there, but he's a good option to fill a role the slot if they need him.
Somebody who I also have as a sleeper is John Vea Johnson, which is somebody that Ryan actually sniped in a draft ahead of me, who I was waiting to take. But he's a rookie, undrafted free agent.
Out of Toledo.
Yeah. And the reports out of camp are that he is looking great and could easily challenge for a starting job. Right now, he's listed as second in line behind Austin for the slot receiving role. And I don't think it would take much to unseat Taven Austin as the starting slot receiver for the Cowboys. So if you have a late round pick in a deep draft, definitely keep an eye on John Vea Johnson.
Oh, I actually love that take. I go to the University of Toledo, so I love to see my fellow Rockets go on to the NFL and become good players, at least solid contributors. But Randall Cobb is another name that I'm fading him. I think he's done. He hasn't been fantasy relevant in years, and I'm foreseeing an even smaller role in this offense for Cobb than Cole Beasley had. Don't even mess around with Randall Cobb this year.
I absolutely agree with you, Ryan, on Cobb. I think his time is over. I mean, if I may transition over to the tight ends, Jason Witten is another guy. I mean, he was bad at broadcasting, so he decided to go back to the NFL to try to not get fired. I think he'll be reliable, but when you talk about like dad speed, I don't know, man. He sure didn't get faster since 2 years ago when he was slower than molasses. So I'm definitely not on the Witten, comeback bandwagon. I'm fading Witten.
Yeah, maybe a last round best ball pick to win you a week or something, but not worth your time on fantasy rosters. And Ryan, also, by the way, 2014 really was Randall Cobb's last good season. 829 yards in 2015, but wanted to be able to back you up there with that information as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I know it's been a while. 2014, wow, that's really been a long time.
Ryan was still in elementary school in 2014.
It's the truth. I got just to stick with the tight ends here. I got to agree with the Witten take. I think it's a great locker room signing, but I don't think he's necessarily going to be a factor out in the field. So, I mean, another name to watch. He's not anything special, but Jarwin, was it Blake Jarwin much last year? But he did have that one game toward the end of the year where he had like those 3 touchdown catches. The season ended. He was the de facto starter going into the offseason. He might be somebody that sees an opportunity to start at some point this year again. So, maybe in a deeper league, that could be a name to keep an eye on. Yeah,
and if I had a dollar for every time I heard someone on Twitter or Reddit say that this is Rico Gather's year, I'd probably at least have $500. So it's that's becoming mind-numbing, and at this point, I'm stepping.
He's suspended, I think, for the first 2 games. Yeah, I was on the Rico Gathers and Eric Swoop bandwagon for years, and I'm done. I hate even hearing those names.
So that's it for Dallas. Let's move on to the New York Giants. We had previously picked, or 2 out of 3 picked them to finish last place in the division. Starting at quarterback, JJ, what are you looking at?
If we all don't have Eli Manning as our fading star on this team, I don't know what's wrong with us. And if we don't, it's only because we all assume that that's already a done deal. I mean, it's time to move on. They're definitely in a rebuild. If they don't realize they're in a rebuild, that's only because their GM is an idiot. So I have Eli as my fading star, and I have Daniel Jones as my sleeper. He can get yards on the ground. I think you're looking at a Josh Allen from last year with a little bit more short yardage accuracy. I actually think he might be able to put up numbers once he gets into the game.
Tell me if I'm wrong here, and feel free to let it flow. But just because of his draft capital, it feels like the NFL community, not the fantasy community, just automatically threw him under the bus because he wasn't worth his stock. And I don't feel like people can see past that. Am I crazy here?
No, I agree with you. I think if the Giants had drafted Daniel Jones at, I think it was 17 was their next pick, I think the whole narrative about him would be completely different. And we're hating on Gettleman. We're not hating on Daniel Jones. So I hope the kid gets a shot. I don't think he's going to be great, but I definitely think he can be relevant, especially in super flex leagues towards the end of the season.
That's actually pretty much what I was thinking on Daniel Jones. I last minute put him down as my sleeper. I figured I should at least pick one because I didn't have one for the Giants because I just don't believe in them as a team this year. But Eli's done. I think that's pretty much common knowledge at this point. And Daniel Jones, I don't think he has a very high ceiling, but I think he can be one of those like a quarterback too, that you can draft him at some point in his career and you feel good about that going into the year if you need a quarterback in spot duty.
So rookie drafts are still going on at this time. Most I feel like are done, but non Superflex. Daniel Jones is probably still going late, but in Superflex, where would Daniel Jones go in a rookie
draft? Second round. I'm not gonna take him in the first round like I would like a Kyler Murray or Dwayne Haskins. I'd take him in the early second though, probably after Drew Lock.
Yeah, I would definitely take Daniel Jones in a Superflex league at the end of the first. Just for you need a quarterback in those leagues, and I know the Superflex leagues I'm in, I'm a little bit strapped for QB, but that's because they're 16-team leagues, which makes it a bit tougher.
So let's move to running back, and quite possibly the best in the league. We're looking at
definitely
Saquon Barkley.
Best potential in the league. He might not be the best running back in the league right now, but I think he will be there by the end of the year. I think that the argument could be made that like Ezekiel Elliott is a better running back, or even Le'Veon Bell. But that's based on Barkley's youth. I'm not arguing that he won't be the best running back in the NFL over the better part of the next decade.
Absolutely. In MFL drafts right now, the latest he's being drafted is number 3. He's the consensus 1-1 in all MFL, and in the FFPC drafts that are going on right now, I'm using the amazing RotoViz ADP tool, which is awesome. If you have an opportunity to get Saquon on your team, do it.
Real quick, 91 receptions last year. Is he over or under 90?
I'm going to take the under.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you saw Saquon's best season last year. And I don't think that's a bad thing to say, because 75% of Saquon is still an amazing player every year.
Yeah, that's still running back one.
I think he hit his ceiling last year, but I would still draft him number 1 if I get the pick.
Yeah, if that's a ceiling, it's a pretty high ceiling.
Yeah.
Then Wayne Gallman is backing him up and has proven to be a great fill-in if Saquon, happens to go down or miss any time. Definitely, I think a top priority handcuff.
Yeah, I would say either Wayne Gallman or Jonathan Hilliman, which was an undrafted free agent they signed. But shockingly, there's reports out of camps that Paul Perkins is looking good, but I don't buy it.
2016 called. They want their call back.
Yeah, he is not somebody I'm even worth rostering.
So how about the wide receivers for the Giants?
I mean, I'll quote a great man. And a wise man once said that the Giants have a team full of slot receivers, and I think that was you, JJ.
That was me. That was me.
5 episodes ago, right? It's interesting. We've got wide receivers all over the place on our rising and fading. So let's just talk about them. The top of the depth chart is Golden Tate. It looks like.
Yeah, Golden Tate is my rising star. I mean, I know he was more like a rising again star. He had a bad year last year. He was traded during the season. He never really caught on in Philadelphia, but he's had a full off season with the Giants. All the dude does is catch his balls. All he does is produce. Nobody else is going to be fed targets besides Saquon. So I think Golden Tate is a great investment in redraft leagues, or if you can get him a little bit later, maybe in a dynasty startup.
Yeah, I'm going to actually go a little contrary to that. I put Golden Tate down as my fading star, and I have Sterling Shepard as my rising star. I think Sterling Shepard becomes the top receiver in New York this year. He had over 900 combined yards in 2018. I want to say it was 107 targets, I believe, and 66 receptions. So, I mean, he was solid. He's going into year 4 now. And, I think that Golden Tate's just kind of falling off. He's getting up there in age. I think he'll still be a good, possession receiver. He'll make those tough catches, but I think his days of being a primary are over. And that's probably true. I think that, Odell Beckham is vacating 124 targets, and they've got to go somewhere. And there's just a bevy of quote unquote talent at the wide receiver position. I don't see why it wouldn't be Shepard. I don't think it's Coleman. I don't want to dwell too much on Corey Coleman. I feel like he's bounced around a little bit too much. I'm kind of fading him right there. I kind of agree with just both of your assessments, because I think that it is more of a microcosm of watching the season and seeing that it could literally go anyway. I don't know that I'm adding any of New York Giants wide receivers to my team unless in the late rounds. I could totally see as a sleeper of Darius Slayton. I know that he had some trouble really early in camp. Has kind of jumped up, impressed the coaches. He's seen some first team reps as a 5th round pick. That's not too bad. And I know that it's just early on in camp, but if you can make an impression like that early, good things usually come. Yeah, definitely. I know Darius Slayton ran a really fast 40 time at the combine. So at the very least, I could see him becoming kind of like a solid deep threat at some point this year, and make a few big plays here and there.
And let's not forget the Minister of Defense's son, Reggie White Jr.
Are they related?
Yeah, that's his kid. He is the junior to the Minister of Defense, man. He definitely has athletic profile. Who knows?
Right. And then someone I want to touch on briefly is tight end Evan Ingram. I know that he did not have the greatest year last year, but as you mentioned, there's a team full of slot receivers, but I am more looking to the matchup problem that Ingram can create, and if depending on whether it's Eli trying to get the ball off quick or it is Daniel Jones, looking for a good block and getting the confidence there, or looking for a release and, like I said, matching up against a slower linebacker, I've got a lot of confidence in Evan.
Yeah, he's definitely the main target outside of Saquon and Golden Tate. Yeah, and Evan Ingram is a matchup nightmare. I think he might be the most effective in the slot only because of his size. And the only other tight end to even think about would be Rhett Ellison, and that's only if something happens to Ingram. Outside of that, he's not worth anything.
All right, I think we can put a bow on the Giants and move on to my favorite, the Philadelphia Eagles. That's my team. They've got a solid offense this year, and let's start with the QBs. Carson Wentz, up and down, maybe up again, you thinking?
Carson Wentz is a top 10 with potential to be a top 5 quarterback, but that's when he's playing. He has to stay healthy, so that's the key here.
Agreed.
For the Eagles in general, like they don't have Nick Foles to fall back on anymore. If Carson Wentz gets hurt, it's Nate Sudfeld or Clayton Thorson, rookie. It's not looking good.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Ryan and we talked about this last week with his contract. They're basically putting $100 million on Wentz being able to stay healthy. I hope he can. He's a good kid. I mean, that's my local team. It's not the team I root for, but he's a good kid. I hope he stays healthy and performs well.
Interesting stable of running backs, because it just seems like there are so many that at some point in time have been on somebody's risers, whether they've been ours or elsewhere, just because of almost the volume that you think that one of them's going to get versus who's starting at one point. Jay Ajayi just seems like the best fit, and then he's off the team. Let's get into some running backs, because like I said, there are a few of them.
Now, Michael, you have Jordan Howard as your fading star. Tell me about that.
I'm a little unsure with the way they're going to kind of run this offense. I obviously think that Jordan Howard gets the starting nod. He's been a great running back over, off of his young career. The prevailing thought that kind of sticks in my mind, which of course they say he's improving on every year, is his pass catching ability. I still don't see that. The Eagles like to bring in the third down back of Corey Clement, a Darren Sproles, in the backfield, and it's just I can't see Jordan Howard just staying on the field, especially when it appears that they drafted his heir apparent or someone that they want to see on the field a lot in Miles Sanders. And I don't think that, you spend the draft capital on him and as good of an athlete that Miles Sanders. I didn't add Sanders to a rising or a sleeper, just mostly because I'm just kind of waiting to see what the coaches do with all those running backs. And I think that eventually Miles Sanders is going to be, and I feel like he has bell cow back potential, and that just spells fading for me. It might not be this year, but he's not a running back that I want.
Jordan Howard reminds me a lot of Sean Green. As a Jets fan, Sean Green was a back that we had for a while on our team
out of Iowa, right?
Yeah, out of Iowa. Yeah.
Iowa. Yeah.
He would get 3.5 yards every time in a cloud of dust, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. No matter what was blocked, no matter if he had a 10-yard runway, he would trip at 2 yards and end up with 3. That just sort of reminds me of Jordan Howard. He's a competent back. So I think he might get a lot of carries, but it just his addition throws the entire backfield into question, in my eyes.
And I don't know that I could pick him, maybe where most people are taking him, or maybe even where he deserves to go for a year or maybe half a season. Every year you watch players that start the season off strong, they play a strong, they play a great first half, and then they tail off. And it just, I don't have any stats to back myself up. It's just a feeling with him there.
Yeah, honestly, I kind of compare Jordan Howard's career arc a little bit to Alfred Morris's. Like Morris, he had that great rookie season. It was like 1,600 yards, and he followed that up with a 1,275-yard performance, and then it was 1,074 yards, and now he's a B-rate backup for, what was he, with San Francisco right now? Or is he even signed? So, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of seeing a similar career arc to Jordan Howard.
To be fair, I think I might just be in the echo chamber. Jordan Howard has averaged over 1,000 yards per season.
Yes,
he's averaged over 4 yards a carry. He's averaged 8 touchdowns a year. He doesn't get a ton of receptions, but he gets about 23 per season, 23, 24. I think he's probably around. So he's I said it before, he's a competent back. So he might have a chance to flourish here, but I don't know. I'm sort of stuck in the fantasy analyst world where I can't see him doing it.
Yeah. And Ryan, Alfred Morris, and also for those of you that are yelling at the podcast right now, currently a free agent.
The mighty fall sometimes.
So that's okay. Love to talk about some wide receivers, some of the beneficiaries of a healthy Carson Wentz. I am going to go a little bit off the rails here. And I've got my riser as Alshon Jeffrey. And please let me explain for a second, because this is maybe not your typical riser of someone that you would look that would be young and up and coming. I just don't think that he's done yet. And I didn't feel like fading him or put him in a sleeper category. Jeffrey, the last couple of years has put up pretty good numbers, 57 receptions and 65, 789 2 years ago, 843. I think that he gets a little unfairly judged by that drop in the playoffs. I am looking at the rest of the wide receivers, right? And feel free to jump in here if you guys want. But with Deshaun Jackson, Nelson Aguilar, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Charles Johnson too, I do feel like Alshon's a clear leader there. Looking at, Deshaun Jackson's prowess, the deep threat, and the speed that's probably fading, but still there. I just wasn't at really a feeling for any of these players to put them as legitimate risers unless they were young. And I still feel like Jeffrey, is of the age to command the respect of a wide receiver one on this team. So do I think that, his stock is soaring? No, but I definitely think that he's still a strong contributor on this Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, I have Alshon Jeffrey fading star, not because I don't think he can still produce, but I think his time in the league is coming to an end. He had his peak a few years ago when he was with Chicago. He hit 1,400 yards in his second year, and he hasn't come even close since. I think he can put up definitely wide receiver 3 numbers, but I think the door is open for somebody to step into. And I see J.J. Arcega-Whiteside as being that red zone target that Alshon used to be, just being that big-bodied, smart receiver. So I have J.J. Arcega-Whiteside as my rising star.
I have Arcega-Whiteside as my sleeper. I don't, and the reason for that is because I think he's going to get an opportunity this year. I think he's going to be a starter at some point, but early on, I think he's going to be a little lost in the shuffle just because that is such a crowded receivers room, especially when you throw in the tight ends with Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. There are a lot of mouths to feed in Philly. And so I see Arcega-Whiteside as more of a sleeper, but he's somebody that if not this year, next year, I could see emerging as Carson Wentz's top target. And while we're talking about the receivers in Philadelphia, I'm fading Deshaun Jackson.
Really?
Yeah, he's 32. He's he's jumped around for the last several seasons. Now he's back in Philly where it all started. When I was doing some research for this, I guess I didn't really realize this, but Deshaun Jackson has over 10,000 career receiving yards. So this is one of the best receivers of this job. But all good things come to an end, and it just seems like Deshaun Jackson's falling off a little bit. He got off to that hot start last year in Tampa. He slowed down. He dealt some injuries, and he finished the year pretty slowly. If you take away his first 2 games of the year, he did not do much at all the entire season after that. So I'm kind of just looking at this player that's well past his prime, and he's in a prime position to just kind of get lost in a shuffle with surrounded by players that are younger and have more upside at this point in their careers.
I kind of think that Deshaun Jackson is going to be rejuvenated in his return to Philly. I don't know what it is about him. He kind of reminds AI, just in his toughness, his tenacity, which is kind of what makes Philadelphia love him. So I think this coming back is going to rejuvenate his career. He finally gives Carson Wentz a true deep target, which is something that Wentz is good at. He can throw the deep ball, but nobody has been around to catch it. And Deshaun Jackson is going to give him that opportunity to throw the ball deep, have somebody bring it in. I mean, last year, I know you said that it was, Ryan, that it was only in the first couple games that he was really good. Mm-hmm. But he averaged 18.9 yards per reception.
That's a lot.
I mean, that's his third highest in his career. If he can stay healthy, he is going to be an amazing sleeper, especially in best ball leagues.
Probably looking at 2 of, I hesitate to say the best tight ends, but maybe one of the greatest tandems of tight ends on any team.
I actually think they're going to be the best 1-2 punch at tight end in the NFL this year. You take Zach Ertz, who's a top 3 tight end, and you throw in Dallas Goedert, who has pretty much limitless athletic potential. He came out of a small school, South Dakota State. Like, not many. They're not exactly known for their NFL talent.
3-point shooters, maybe, but not exactly NFL talent.
Yeah. So, I mean, so you take a guy like that, you get him acclimated to the NFL after a year, and he had, for a rookie tight end, he actually had a pretty solid year. 33 receptions on 44 targets, 334 yards, and 4 touchdowns. All right. He's not a world beater, or he wasn't a world beater, but I mean, we've seen rookie tight ends drafted higher perform worse than that. So, I really like Philadelphia's tight ends room this year, and I think that the Ertz-Goddard combo is going to be lethal.
I have to agree with you, Ryan. I actually think Goddard is the better of the two and might overtake Ertz. That's an amazing tight end room to have. I mean, those are 2 great talents.
Is that the prevailing thought? Because there's something, I don't know if it's my spidey sense or if it's just me being irrational, but whenever you get that kind of talent in the same room, in the same position, it screams trade to me, right? So I know that I've got Goddard as a sleeper, and Is there? I can't play GM here, where I'm thinking that maybe Ertz isn't get traded, but it just seems like that's the route they're going to go. If not this year, maybe next year.
Ertz has a huge contract, and I don't see them moving Ertz only because of the cap hit. They're better off keeping him and just, dealing with having two stars at the same position.
Yeah, I gotta agree with that. I think that the Eagles are in win now mode, and you're gonna need Zach Ertz to help you, get to the playoffs, and possibly back to a Super Bowl. If there is a trade, it'll happen next in the off season, but I don't think we're gonna see it unless Philly just comes out flat and they lose like 6 of their first 8 games and it's just not looking good and they start to kind of sell off some pieces, maybe, but I don't think that's going to happen. If there is a trade, it's not happening in season.
Before we move on, I just wanted to mention a wide receiver that I was remiss in not mentioning previously. Charles Johnson had a great season, or was having a great season, for the Alliance of American Football. I don't know if you guys remember him back when he was he was always in the talks of being like the next big thing for Minnesota. But he was having a great season in the AAF, and the Eagles signed him. So he's somebody just to keep an eye on, coming back as a more mature player, putting in the work. He might be a sleeper on that team.
Yeah, I can see that. I remember him having games for the Vikings, actually. I remember that name from somewhere. So yeah, that's actually a really, especially in a deeper league, that would be a really great late round pick.
So I know you're so guys excited now as we finish up the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's move on to the Washington Redskins, and we'll start with quarterback. Who is going to start at quarterback for a majority of games this year?
Dwayne Haskins, without a question. The Skins got a steal with Haskins still being available at 15. Coming out of Ohio State, I had him pegged as a franchise quarterback. I think he has everything you want in a player. He's not a very mobile guy, but he's that classic like drop back passer, pocket guy. He's really smart. He's a great arm. He's deadly accurate. The talent around him isn't exactly great. I think Haskins has a high ceiling, and he should be the week 1 starter. And if he's not, it'll happen shortly thereafter. Like, I'm predicting by week 3, Dwayne Haskins is going to be the starting quarterback.
I mean, is he going to get a lot of the work to really, show off his arm strength, or is this going to be like a running team? Not to get into the running backs just yet, but another stable that's going to get some work.
Yeah, I think that Haskins is actually in a great situation as a rookie, just because he isn't going to be asked to do everything this year. He does have a strong offensive line. He does have a good running game with Darius Geis and Adrian Peterson, and they added Bryce Love in the last draft. Yeah, so yeah, I think they will run the ball a lot. So that's going to give Haskins that just go in there and do your job. Just do what you got to do. Make the throw. He's impressing so far in training camp. He's been looking really good. I'm hearing a lot of positive things coming out of Washington about him. Yeah, I actually think he's in a great situation. I don't love him as a fantasy option this year, maybe toward the end of the year, but going into year 2, I think that he has a shot to be like one of those like higher end like quarterback 2s that you draft like that early on in his career.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think Haskins would be drafted in a redraft league. I wouldn't take him necessarily in a single QB league. In a 2 QB league, I think that Haskins is a solid pickup, but I'm not sure who's going to start between him and Case Keenum. They might take it slow and roll out Keenum for a few games. And don't forget, Colt McCoy is there. They love Colt McCoy. I know he got hurt towards the end of the year, but if he comes back healthy, he also might be a starting option.
That would be an interesting twist to this story if Colt McCoy beat out the first-round pick rookie for the starting job.
Yeah, maybe that is a pretty bad take.
I don't know that I see that happening. That's a little too crazy. I have Haskins as my riser for many of the reasons that you said. Accurate physical tools to be a starter in the NFL here, and why not give him the shot? Washington has struggled, the past couple of years, and they're in a very, very tough division. None of us picked the Skins to win that division, and it's up for grabs. I think, like I said, with Wentz and Prescott, and whether it's, you look on the other side and you've got either Eli and Daniel Jones or now Keenum and Haskins, why not put Haskins in there? Like, what do they literally have to lose? Especially, it's just a young core that they can develop, but get him some playing time now.
I completely agree.
I have to agree with you. Looking at this team, you have very young players and very old players, it seems. Moving on to running backs, you have Geis and Bryce Love, who could form, as long as they're healthy, an amazing backfield for the Washington football team. Geis had a lot of hype coming out before he got hurt last year. Bryce Love should have come out a season before. And I feel bad for him that he got so hurt this past season, which really hurt his draft stock. But those two guys might be really, really good this year.
Adrian Peterson starts how many games for Washington here?
Short of Darius Geis getting injured, I don't think Adrian Peterson's going to start at all. I really like Geis a lot. I had him as my number 2 running back in last year's rookie class behind, obviously, Saquon Barkley. I'm not going to talk about who I had number 3, but yeah, that didn't work out too well. We're just going to forget that I ever made that take.
Now Ronald Jones.
Yeah.
It was Ronald Jones, wasn't it?
It was Ronald Jones.
Yes.
There's always year 2 for him. Yeah. So
anyway, let's get back to the Redskins instead of our bad running back takes, because I drafted Ronald Jones in the first round of my big league.
Whew. Hey, all right. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, we'll talk about him more in our NFC South episode coming up in the next few weeks. Yeah, I think they have potential to have a really, really good backfield this year. Very potentially injury prone. I hope Darius Geis comes back full strength. I hope Bryce Love comes back full strength, because I think that Love is the perfect complement to Geis once he does come back to the field. And I think they could actually end up being one of the better running teams in the league this year.
Yeah, and I know AP has talked about 2,000 yards, but our listeners know how I feel about AP, who beat a child with a stick. Samjine Perrine, and I might be saying that wrong only because I'm whatever. Sam Congato, Samwise Gamgee has been getting some buzz. I know I liked him as a rookie, but I don't think Geis is going to be ready to start the season.
Samaje Perine is trash. He is a dumpster fire. Okay? I am fading him. There has not been one person. Usually, like in fantasy, you like to talk about like people that know them, and if you ran into them, what would happen? Samaje, I do not like you in fantasy. You will not be on my team. Goodbye. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
With that, let's move on to the wide receivers. I have as my rising star, because I only see one rising star in this team, is Terry McLaurin. I think his connection with Dwayne Haskins actually be a benefit to Haskins. And as soon as he starts, I think he's going to be the go-to receiver.
I have to agree with that take, actually. They already have that chemistry built up from their time at Ohio State together. I think it's great they get to play together in the NFL, and I think I think that could be a sneaky good receiver quarterback combo for the next few years. I really like that pairing.
I tend to like Trey Quinn as I think the wide receiver, because there are several of them, right? With Josh Doxson, Paul Richardson. I think Doxson still has a lot of potential. I liked Paul Richardson in Seattle, but it seemed like it didn't translate well to Washington. You talked on Terry McLaurin. But like I said, I kind of like Trey Quinn, out of SMU. He, had over 1,200 yards when he came out. He seems like a really good Jamison Crowder replacement. He's just got to get on the field is the thing. And then we didn't even touch on Kelvin Harmon, a big-bodied receiver that has great hands and maybe might not be the fastest, but that's where I think some of these different wide receivers come into play. You've got some speed in Doxson and Quinn and definitely McLaurin, and you've got a possession receiver in Kelvin Harmon. There is talent on this roster in the wide receiver corps.
Yeah, you're right. I have Kelvin Harmon as my sleeper. I think that he has, he's teetering right on that edge between being Laquan Treadwell, right, and being just a solid possession receiver in the NFL. So I'm thinking he's going to tilt towards becoming a great possession receiver, just a tough-nosed guy who comes down with the ball. So he's the guy who I have as my sleeper for this team.
And and I actually have two names that I'm fading. One's Josh Doxson, but I'm having a hard time fading him because I'm not sure he ever shined.
Preach.
Can a star that never existed fade? So yeah,
Josh, we should run another philosophy pod.
That would be pretty interesting.
Nobody wants to hear us talk
football and philosophy.
Yeah.
But yeah, Doxson, I'm just not seeing it. I like Paul Richardson as a deep threat. And I think that was part of the problem with him last year is, you take him out of Seattle where you have Russell Wilson, who has the best deep ball in the league. And then you stick him in Washington where, Alex freaking Smith is quarterback, the king of the dink and dunk. Most of the passes completed are right around the line of scrimmage, basically. So he wasn't really a great scheme fit. So yeah, I could really see a scenario this year where Terry McLaurin, Kelvin Harmon, and Trey Quinn actually take over as the top three receiver options. Because Doxson's on his way out, and maybe Paul Richardson because Haskins does have a gun, so he could probably connect with Richardson on a few deep balls.
Tyreek Hill didn't seem to mind Alex Smith's deep ball.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill's he's an incredible talent.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. But
receiver.
Before we close out the show here, what are we doing with these tight ends, folks?
The only person I am looking at as far as tight ends on this team is Donald Parham.
The rookie out of Stetson. They make great hats.
They make great cologne.
Cologne, right?
I just think a 6'8" wide receiver in a tight end's body, he's already making some splashes in training camp. He's only 21, which is pretty young for a tight end who tend to come in the league a little bit older. He's the guy I'm putting money on. Jordan Reed, God bless the guy. He's just never healthy. And Vernon Davis, just kind of look at those two guys as the same person. Because so often that if you drafted Jordan Reed, you had to have Vernon Davis because they both would play one full season combined. So I'm staying away from all of that. I'm fading both of those guys.
That has been our NFC East division preview, of course, for the latest rankings and Dynasty football content, we invite you to visit us at rideordynasty.com.
And also check out our Twitter at Rider Dynasty.
Yeah, and you can listen to our podcast anywhere podcasts can be listened to. Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple.
Leave us a rating and review, and we'll read it on air.
We appreciate you listening to this episode of the Rider Dynasty podcast. I'm Michael Clark. That's Ryan and JJ. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a wonderful night.
Good night.
Catch you in the next one.